Have you ever apologized and later realized you did absolutely nothing wrong? That uneasy feeling that something isn't right, but you can't explain it? That's not a coincidence. That's manipulation, not the loud, obvious kind. This one is quiet, calculated. It doesn't attack your logic. It quietly rewrites your reality. And by the time you realize what happened, you've already said, "I'm sorry," for something they did. In this video, I'm going to break down one of the most dangerous and invisible forms of dark manipulation. By the end of this video, you'll know exactly how to recognize it, protect yourself, and stop apologizing for things that were never your fault. They never raise their voice. They just quietly steer the entire conversation without you noticing. You think you're leading, but you're being led. It starts when you ask a direct question, something uncomfortable. You want an answer. They give you one, just enough to seem responsive, then shift the focus. Suddenly, you're not talking about what they did anymore. You're defending who you are. The spotlight is off them, burning straight into you. This isn't accidental. It's surgical. They redirect with precision. One comment, one subtle accusation, and you're explaining yourself instead of holding them accountable. They don't argue. They maneuver. They don't deny. They reframe. You walk away drained, confused, convinced it was just a misunderstanding. But it wasn't. It was conversational theft. Your concern was hijacked and replaced with their narrative. They now own the story. You just live in it. That's the danger. They don't need to win the argument. They just need to change what the argument is about. Next, we dive deeper into something colder, the kind of weakness that isn't weakness at all. They cry, tremble, confess childhood trauma, not to heal, but to disarm you. It looks raw, real, honest, but it's bait. The timing is always perfect. Right when you're angry, questioning them, or ready to walk away, suddenly they open up. A crack in their armor, but that crack was carved deliberately. It's not about connection, it's about leverage. When someone shows you pain, your instincts soften. You lower your guard. You step back. You question yourself. Am I being too harsh? Should I give them another chance? And that's when they strike, with guilt, persuasion, or silence. You feel cold for holding them accountable. You let things slide, again, and they know it. Vulnerability becomes a tool, a manipulation disguised as a moment of truth. Real vulnerability builds trust. This kind builds cages. You're not talking to the hurt version of them. You're talking to the version that knows exactly how much hurt to show and when. But manipulation doesn't always play soft. Sometimes it walks in bold, loud, and absurd, only to trap you the moment it retreats. They start with something outrageous, an ask so big, so unfair, it feels like a joke. You reject it instantly. Of course you do. That's the point. It was never about getting the first demand. It was bait. Now they back off, acting reasonable. They offer something smaller, more balanced. It feels like middle ground, but it's not. It's exactly where they wanted you from the start. This is reverse anchoring. The first request wasn't real. It was psychological warfare. It shifts your frame of reference, makes the second offer seem acceptable, even generous. But you've just agreed to something you would have never accepted if it had been the opening move. You think you stood your ground. You think you negotiated. You didn't. You walked into the negotiation halfway through, with their rules, on their terms. That fake compromise, it wasn't a loss for them. It was the setup. You didn't compromise. You were calibrated. But some tactics don't even need setup. They just twist your words until you're trapped in a conversation that never actually happened. You say one thing, they hear another, but not by accident. You speak calmly, "I need space." They hear, "You're abandoning me." You express a boundary. They turn it into an attack. Now you're not holding your line, you're defending your character, trying to explain what you meant, backpedaling, apologizing for a sentence they rewrote in real time. This is tensional misinterpretation. They inject meaning that wasn't there, tension that wasn't spoken, and suddenly, you're in damage control mode for something you never actually said. It's genius in its simplicity. They don't have to prove you wrong. They just reframe your words to sound cruel, selfish, cold, then act wounded, disappointed, maybe even betrayed. You panic. You fix it. You beg to be understood. And just like that, They've flipped the power. You're no longer the one with the issue. You're the issue. This tactic doesn't shout. It rewrites reality mid-sentence. And it works because you're too busy defending your intent to notice the manipulation buried in the reaction. But there's another tactic that doesn't need twisting. It just repeats, quietly, until your brain gives up and believes the lie. They don't argue. They echo, again and again. You're too sensitive. You're overreacting. You always do this. Simple phrases, dropped casually, consistently, until they become background noise. But that noise rewires your mind. You start to hesitate, to doubt, to internalize. It's called the illusion of truth effect. Psychologically proven. The more often you hear something, the more likely you are to believe it, even if it's false. Repetition bypasses logic. It slips past your defenses and becomes a belief. At first you push back. You know it's not true. But over time, the repetition wears down resistance. You stop correcting them. You start questioning yourself. Maybe I am overreacting. Maybe I am the problem. That's how they win. Not with one big lie, but with 1,000 tiny ones, whispered over time, until their version of you replaces your own. It's not persuasion, it's erosion. And if wearing you down with words doesn't work, they'll bring in someone else, or pretend to, because nothing isolates you faster than thinking everyone's already against you. They don't fight alone. They bring shadows with them. Even Sarah thinks you're overreacting. My friends all say, you've changed. Everyone agrees, you're the problem. Whether those people exist or not doesn't matter. Their names are tools. Their opinions are weapons. This is triangulation. It creates pressure without confrontation. It surrounds you with imaginary consensus. Now, it's not just them against you. It's a crowd, and you're outnumbered. You start to feel paranoid, defensive. Is Sarah really saying that? Do their friends think I'm toxic? You isolate yourself. You stop trusting your instincts. You defer. You submit. That's exactly what they want. The third-person attack shifts the power dynamic. It removes the chance for direct dialogue and replaces it with unseen judgment. You're no longer arguing with a person, you're defending yourself against a narrative. And worst of all, you're never allowed to question the source, because that would make you the unreasonable one. But when words and names lose their grip, they switch tactics. They disappear, and their silence will scream louder than anything they've ever said. They don't yell, they vanish. No texts, no eye contact, no emotion, just absence. Cold, deliberate, strategic. It's not distance, it's punishment. A withdrawal of connection so complete, you start to question your reality. This is emotional timeout, a tactic that doesn't look like manipulation, but it is. It exploits your discomfort with uncertainty, your need for closure, your fear of abandonment. While they stay calm and distant, you spiral. You replay every word, every look, every silence. Did I go too far? Did I say the wrong thing? Should I apologize? Eventually, you do. Not because you were wrong, but because the silence was unbearable. Because they didn't give you resolution. They gave you a void, and you filled it with guilt. This isn't passive behavior. It's active control. The absence becomes the weapon. They don't need to argue with you. They just make you argue with yourself. But not all manipulation is silence. Some of it speaks, loudly. And over time, it doesn't just confuse you. It rewrites the very rules of what's real. This isn't denial, it's reconstruction. They don't just reject your version of events, they replace it, piece by piece. They remember things that never happened. They forget things that did. And they do it with such confidence, such calm certainty, that you start to wonder if you're the one misremembering. You say they raised their voice. They say you imagined it. You recall the silence. They claim they comforted you. Over time, your memory bends. Your perception cracks. You lose trust in your own mind. This is gaslighting evolved. Not just lying, not just twisting, but rebuilding reality to make you question your sanity. They don't argue facts. They rewrite the script, scene by scene, until they become the only reliable narrator in your life. And once they control the narrative, they control you. You stop pushing back. You stop trusting yourself. You cling to their version of truth because yours is slipping away. It's not manipulation. It's psychological warfare. But not every tactic is grand or elaborate. Sometimes it's as simple as knowing you care too much to walk away, and they use that against you, relentlessly. They know your weakness isn't anger, it's empathy, and they exploit it with precision. They don't threaten, they don't beg, they just suffer, quietly, visibly, tragically, just enough for you to feel responsible. You set a boundary, they act hurt. You say no, they look disappointed. You speak your truth, they go silent, heavy with sadness. Not to express pain, but to reflect it back onto you. To make you feel like the villain in a script they've rewritten to suit their needs. This isn't about emotion, it's about control. Because once you feel guilty, they don't need to convince you. You'll convince yourself. You'll soften your stance. You'll compromise. You'll sacrifice. They don't ask directly. They let your conscience do the work. Your kindness becomes a leash. Your empathy, a trap. They don't overpower you. They let you surrender. But when guilt stops working, when you finally start seeing through the cracks, they turn to urgency, panic, pressure, anything to make sure you don't have time to think. Suddenly, everything is critical. Now or never. Decide fast. Don't think. Just act. They create pressure out of thin air. Fake deadlines, emotional ultimatums, manufactured crises, anything to collapse your ability to pause, reflect, and say no. The goal isn't action, it's panic. And panic always favors the manipulator. This is forced acceleration. They rush your decision-making so you can't access logic. They use tension like a gun to your head. If you don't respond right now, everything will fall apart. But that threat isn't real. It's a stage, set to hijack your clarity. You feel trapped. You agree to things you'd never consider in silence. You say yes just to stop the pressure, but you're not choosing, you're reacting. And they know if they keep you reacting, they stay in control, because thinking is dangerous to them. But once you see the urgency for what it is, a trick, not a truth, you take back your time, and with it, your power. And that's when the manipulation ends, cold, quiet, powerless. The most dangerous manipulators don't need to overpower you. They just make you hand yourself over. They don't scream. They don't demand. They tilt reality. One word, one silence, one fake tear at a time. And by the time you realize you're off balance, you've already apologized, compromised, given in. This isn't about intelligence. It's about awareness. Smart people get manipulated every day, not because they're weak, but because they assume everyone else plays fair. Here's the truth. Manipulators don't want love. They want control. And the moment you stop needing their approval is the moment they lose their weapon. You don't win by fighting them. You win by becoming untouchable, cold, clear, unavailable.